Does your college have a fair dealing policy? If the answer is yes, this module will give you a brief introduction to that policy's guidelines and explain how you can apply them. If you're unsure about whether your college has a policy, ask the person designated by your college to answer copyright questions. They can tell you about the copyright practices that your college currently has in place. First, where did these guidelines come from? The Copyright Act, the law that governs copyright in Canada, was amended in 2012 to expand fair dealing to include uses of works for educational purposes. The Supreme Court of Canada ruled in July 2012 that the user's right to fair dealing in the Copyright Act permits educators to copy and distribute short excerpts from copyright-protected works without seeking permission from or paying to the copyright owner. To help colleges understand what a short excerpt is, legal counsel for the Association of Canadian Community Colleges has provided us with some practical guidelines that also ensure reasonable safeguards for copyright owners. The same or similar guidelines are used in most K-12 schools as well as in many universities across Canada. Let's see how the fair dealing guidelines describe a short excerpt. There are several descriptions of a short excerpt in these guidelines. Let's start with the first one. A short excerpt means A. Up to 10% of a copyright-protected work, including literary work, musical score, sound recording, and audio-visual work. How do you figure out of your short excerpt is 10% of its source? It's fairly easy to calculate 10% of a literary work like a book, journal, newspaper, or magazine. Refer to the work's total number of pages and then divide it by 10. A short excerpt of a book that has 100 pages would be 10 pages in length. Copying from a musical score, sound recording, or an audio-visual work such as a film is a little more complicated, but any reasonable assessment would likely be considered fair. For example, one track amounting to less than 10% of a whole compact disc would likely be considered fair. Up to 10 minutes of a feature film that is 100 minutes in length would likely be considered fair. Up to 10 bars from a musical score that is 100 bars in length would likely be considered fair. The definition of a short excerpt is not restricted to 10% of a work. You can choose from other options if they are easier to apply or if they are better suited to your educational objectives. For example, sometimes the book chapter or journal article you would like to copy may exceed 10% of the book or journal. Does this mean you're going over the fair dealing limit? Not necessarily. Options B and C permit you to copy up to one entire chapter from a book or one entire article from a journal. There are also options for copying an artistic work, poem, or musical score, but take note that you may only copy these short excerpts from works like compilations or anthologies that contain multiple artist works, poems, musical scores, or other similar material. What are you permitted to do with these short excerpts? You may hand out one paper copy to each student in your class, or you may post a digital copy to your college's learning management system like Blackboard or Desire to Learn. Is there anything else you should know? Yes. Make sure the way you're dealing with the work is fair. Using multiple short excerpts from the same source is not fair to the copyright owner. What else? If you are charging fees to your students for the use of these short excerpts, the fee should only cover the institution's costs, including overhead. Profits cannot be generated. If you need to copy more than a short excerpt, contact the person designated by your college to answer copyright questions. They can give you some options or alternatives. Is there anything else you should know? And of course, always cite your source. By citing the source and author, you're acknowledging the original source that the short excerpt came from. This has been a general discussion about fair dealing guidelines. For more information, always refer to your college's copyright practices or ask the person designated by your college to answer copyright questions. Your college library is a good place to start.